Welcome to this month's Together We Can action items. My name is Rob Crain. I'm a personal injury attorney in Dallas, and along with my friend Richie Butler, we are co-founders of Together We Can. This month we look at two very important events in our nation's history, Juneteenth and the Tulsa Race Massacre. And they're important not just for what happened on those days, but what happened in the aftermath of those events and how our actions at that time and thereafter set us on a path to where we are today in regards to equality and where we are in regards to racial justice in this country. So starting with Juneteenth, it is the commemoration of the arrival of Union Army General Gordon Granger into Galveston, Texas on June 19th of 1865. Upon his arrival, he read General Order Number 3, which proclaimed freedom from slavery in Texas. As a footnote, the Emancipation Proclamation of January 1, 1863, which freed enslaved persons, did not include Texas. And likewise, as a footnote, the pronouncement of General Order Number 3 did not include the Union border states of Delaware and Kentucky. But Juneteenth is still considered to be the official end of slavery in this country, and later that year, the 13th Amendment to the Constitution was ratified and abolishing slavery nationwide from then forward. The celebration is observed by 47 states in the country, and Texas was the first to do so in January of 1980. So with Juneteenth, we have the pronouncement of freedom for enslaved persons, but at that time, there was no follow-up of assistance of any real kind. And what happens in Reconstruction is unfortunate. We had just lost President Lincoln to assassination, and from that point forward, we see the enactment of black codes, of Jim Crow laws, segregation, and African Americans are still denied basic rights, including the right to vote. And as we look back today and how we are and our status as providing equality and justice for all in this country, we need to look back at our path and how we came from Juneteenth and how those steps impact where we are today. Likewise, with the Tulsa Race Massacre, we have a historical event which I did not know about, I'm embarrassed to say, but I did not know about it until 2020 when there was a presidential campaign rally that had been scheduled for Juneteenth in Tulsa, and there was reaction to having such an event in Tulsa, of all places, on that day. And education for many Americans like myself came about for the first time about this Greenwood district of just a wonderful, prosperous African-American community, probably the most affluent, if not the most, and one of the most affluent African-American communities, of shops, of homes, of churches. It was beautiful by all accounts. And there are reasons why this prosperous district developed in Oklahoma, which you'll learn about in our action items. But what transpires across the time of May 31st to June 1 of 1921, 100 years ago, is a series of violence unlike any in our nation's history. It was the first time that airplanes were used to drop gasoline bombs, bombs of any kind, on Americans. And it was the worst race violence in our nation's history, causing the death of 150 to 300 African Americans, many of whose bodies were dumped in mass graves, which, as we record this message, there is a process underway in Greenwood where they are exploring and digging for the remains of many of those victims. The 40 square block community was burned to the ground, and that included all those churches, businesses, homes, and there were no arrests made, and there were no insurance claims paid for the victims of that horrific violence. From that event, there's a cover-up by the local leaders. The newspaper, which had played a role in inciting the violence, then went quiet about what had occurred in Tulsa, and it went largely unspoken for decades. And as you will see in some of the interviews provided, there are people who grew up in Tulsa who never knew about what happened in the Greenwood district until they got to college or much later in life. And what can we learn about such a tragedy that is allowed to be covered up, that is allowed to go without any kind of accountability, without any kind of reflection and repair for the damage that was done in such a horrific way? And those questions are certainly raised in the materials that we provide for you. We have, on that note, instead of a movie of the month, we're going to go with documentary of the month. NBA basketball star Russell Westbrook is the executive producer of a new documentary showing on the History Channel, which we provide you the link for you to be able to access. It is called Tulsa Burning, the 1921 Race Massacre. Likewise, this month, we're fortunate to have an In Their Shoes segment. This one is from Paul Stafford, exceptional lawyer. Paul is former president of the J.L. Turner Legal Association, former president of the Dallas Bar Association. In this month, he is being inducted as the chair of the African American Lawyers section of the State Bar of Texas. He will tell us about his experience as an African American man and some of the microaggressions that he sees and experiences throughout his daily walk. So we hope that you find new information. We hope that you become more educated as to some of the events in our nation's history. And more importantly, this is a month where really reflecting upon how we have come from these events and our path toward where we are today, and being able to have open discussions about those things that transpired in the past and not getting immediately on the right path, which has led us to some of the issues that we see in our daily life here in America. So hopefully it'll be inspirational in that we can have good conversation about these events and productive responses today. This is a wonderful opportunity. In the face of tragedy, there are wonderful opportunities here for greater growth for all of us in this wonderful country of ours. We hope you enjoy this month's monthly action items, and we hope to see you again next month.